Here's Brody Brazil.
I mean, there are some things we do know about the Oakland A's, but to be quite honest, in the bigger picture, there are still so many more questions about their future right now than there are actual answers. It's not even close. So many things we don't know compared to the few things we do know. And one of the biggest questions you could ask, it's very fair right now, it's simple. How the heck did we get here? To this awkward and complicated and frustrating and stressful point where the city of Oakland and the team have totally turned their backs on each other. The A's went out and agreed to purchase land in Las Vegas while at the same time not even securing their financials to build this new retractable roof ballpark with Clark County or the state of Nevada. And now they're under this time crunch, about 6 weeks left in the legislative session to orchestrate all of that because there's a January 2024 deadline with Major League Baseball to have all of this submitted. Otherwise, they're off revenue sharing. Okay, so the dust is still up there. The dust has not settled yet. But I do believe at this point, we can look back and start to answer this question of how did we even get to this crazy spot? And maybe the future will help us see it even more clearly. But right now, we don't even go back 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years. We have to take it back to the early 1960s. Because, yeah, that's a rendering of the Oakland Coliseum. But wait a second. What's Lake Merritt doing out there in center field? Yeah, they originally had designed this complex and planned this complex to be at the Peralta site, which, oh yeah, you've also heard of that from 2017 vintage. More on that later on in this video. But that's the whole thing. You've heard of the saying that the easy thing and the right thing to do are rarely the same thing. Well, they had come up with this plan. They thought this was a good location. And from what I understand, because I was not even close to being around in the early 1960s, they had another site pop up, the current COLISEUM site, which was just a little bit cheaper, not even by much, but just a little bit more accessible, more within reach, and a little bit less expensive. So you know what? Let's go with that instead of this. Can you imagine if Oakland's baseball stadium had always been closer to downtown? It's my thought in this video that all of these different slides and things that I'm going to show you here, every single one of these things I'm going to feature could have been a turning point that would have never had us in this current situation where the A's have stayed at the Coliseum way too long and now they're in trouble because it's way past expired. You kind of can't keep drinking the milk when the expiration date has already happened. So the Coliseum originally supposed to be somewhere else. And when I say built on the wrong site, it's not like there was a mistake made in the construction. No. It was a mistake made in the actual approval of this. Can you imagine if Oakland and Alameda County had got it right back in the early 1960s? Built it here, totally different scenario. I don't even think we would be having this conversation right now. Some of the older ballparks across our country that have survived are way more in downtown and urban environments than the ones with huge parking lots. Even though I do see a big parking lot there, you know that would have disappeared over the years, and this would have been more of an urban stadium venue than what the Coliseum currently is, a big parking lot around it. Okay, so then the next thing doesn't really happen in the 70s, but into the 80s and 90s, the Coliseum, which, come on, that picture right there is so sentimental to me. That's how I remember it growing up. The orange seats, the ice plant in center field, 3 different scoreboards, the East Bay Hills in the background. That's exactly how I remember it. But the problem is what I remember never changed. Like from the mid-'80s to really the mid-'90s. I mean, when Mount Davis went up, and there's a whole conversation on that still to be had. But this facility never really got updated or upgraded. And the problem is other places did. Like, you look at Angel Stadium, for example, in Southern California. I guess I'm going to pick 2 SoCal stadiums here, or even Dodger Stadium. They've constantly kept up that facility, upgraded it, not only just for the fans, but also the players and amenities that they need as well, too. They've made it attractive to keep coming there over the years. But honestly, and for those of you watching, you tell me right now, and some of you who went to the Coliseum for all those decades, tell me how that place changed, at all, from 1986 to 1994. Nothing. a decade. And honestly, I wasn't alive, but I could say, how about this, from 74 to 94? How did it ever change? Yeah, the answer is not a lot. And so that got this place behind the curve. Then by the 2000s, when you're talking about moving out and you're running out of time, well, guess what? You never put anything into it when you should have before, and now you're really behind the trend and behind the curve. So in my opinion, and people say how the Coliseum got so bad, it was these 2 decades which also featured a lot of winning. And winning erases a lot of things. People will still come to the ballpark when you've got 88, 89, and 90. You got the Bash brothers and Stu and Eck and Carney and Steiny and Ricky and yeah, okay, yeah. You see where I'm going there? A lot of that winning kind of masked the Coliseum that never really got upgraded or modernized. Then you get to the mid-90s, and then you get a totally different looking stadium. I mean, quite honestly, that place went from baseball friendly. I mean, it was always a multi-purpose venue, but it went from baseball friendly to football first. Let me take a step back. Going back to that last slide, if the Coliseum had been updated or upgraded to huge extents in the 80s or 90s, maybe we wouldn't be here right now with this problem. Same thing here. Maybe if the Coliseum in the 90s wasn't taken over by football, maybe we wouldn't be here. That thing is torturous in center field. It's ugly. And not just what the Raiders did to that stadium. And by the way, this is not me bashing the Raiders video. They've moved on. They might have a hand in the A's in Las Vegas and that move. Stay tuned on that note. These two once roommates might be neighbors again. Or maybe not, if that's not going to work out. But even in the political landscape, like what the Raiders did in burning so many bridges with the city of Oakland and the county of Alameda, it made everything else that the A's actually wanted to do very difficult. Because all of a sudden, the county and the city could say, well, we've been burned before by professional sports. Yeah, but the Raiders and the Warriors and the A's, totally different entities. Just because the Raiders did it doesn't mean that everybody was going to take that approach. So again, sharing this stadium complicated so many things starting in the mid-90s when that structure went up, when the Raiders started to make promises they couldn't keep and have a really rough relationship politically in the East Bay. Again, if you go back in time and none of that stuff happened, maybe we wouldn't be here right now in this situation. Okay, then back to just the A's by themselves. In the late 2000s, mid to late 2000s, multiple failed attempts at Fremont with Cisco Field and the Victory Court site, just south of Jack London Square in Oakland, they could not get these projects together. And all of a sudden, you kind of run into something where they're pecking around, but maybe the A's are never serious, and that might have sent a message to local government, to Major League Baseball across the nation that, well, they're just kind of flirting with these sites. But think about how ridiculous it is that we ever took like Cisco Field seriously. We saw some renderings. We heard about a site in Milpitas, which I think now is like a strip mall, something like that. San Jose still to come. That's a whole different conversation. But Fremont and Oakland, we heard vaguely about these things. They never even made the agenda of city council meetings. They never got pushed to any degree. Like Howard Terminal, people thought, well, this isn't real, but they also didn't maybe consider that, like, we just got an EIR certified. We just got the land to have port priority use removed. There were so many tangible steps made to get Howard Terminal to this point where it exists and is stalled at right now. But I mean, none of these attempts before were ever serious. What if they were serious? What if they actually made some progress on any of these? Would we be here in this same fashion right now? Probably not. Okay. Then we get into the early 2010s and the A's say, well, San Jose looks like a good option for us, until Major League Baseball decided to block that territory from them. And this after all those years of Commissioner Bud Selig's Blue Ribbon Committee. Oh my goodness, that Blue Ribbon Committee. Every time somebody would say the words blue ribbon, I have to stop them. Just don't even say the last word. Don't even say it. I don't even want to hear it. They don't do anything. I don't even think there's a committee that exists. I think that was a mockery made by Bud Selig, a non-existent committee, like a pretend joke, an inside joke. Oh, the Blue Ribbon Committee, they'll take care of that. Yeah, no such thing, because nothing ever happened with that Blue Ribbon Committee other than blocking the A's from moving to San Jose. Quick side story. I obviously went to college down there. I've worked a ton down there with the Sharks. That stadium was supposed to be right around the corner, right across the street, literally from SAP Center. I'm very well aware how successful the A's would have been in San Jose. At the same time, I also realize that that would have been yanking them out of the arms of the East Bay and Oakland. That established, I still would have been okay with it. It's a regional move. It would have set the A's on a totally different course, how successful, like any Major League Baseball franchise would be. If there were two teams in the Bay Area, one being in San Francisco, the other being in San Jose, like San Jose would do well and just fine and probably great with a Major League Baseball franchise. Yeah, this area, the Bay Area, Northern California, it's big enough for two teams, no doubt. Where do you put them? I mean, obviously it's worked in Oakland and San Francisco. I guess what I'm here to say is because it was new, it had a honeymoon phase, baseball would easily have worked in San Jose. Now, I say that weirdly in reverse because, like, Oakland should have always been the best option. But I remember thinking to myself, what are we, 12, 13 years removed from this? I remember saying in a very cheesy way, if you love something, you got to set it free. Like, you got to let it go to San Jose so it can flourish and blossom and have a bunch of corporate sponsors and a brand new stadium. And it would secure the A's, at least in the Bay Area, for the rest of our lifetimes. Right now, we don't have that assurance now. Hardly at all, do we? San Jose, looking back, would have kept the A's in this region. Now, if you live in Richmond, El Cerrito, Berkeley, Walnut Creek, yeah, going to San Jose is much more of a hike than it is getting to the Coliseum or anywhere in Oakland. But it would have opened up the doors to people living in Morgan Hill and Gilroy and Almaden and parts of San Jose that it's a hike for them to go to any Major League Baseball game. Anyway, the fact that Major League Baseball decided to pull a real estate move, and you all know the backstory of A's and Giants and territory and the Giants removing, and from what I understand, the A's decided to do a handshake on that territory and say, if this helps you, it's yours. And they didn't use it, and apparently the A's could never get it back. But could you imagine, this is an easy one. If this had happened, we wouldn't be here right now. Guaranteed we would not be here right now. Okay, fast forward all the way to 2017. Now we've got some new people in the front office with the Oakland A's. Now we're focused in a different direction. We've thought about maybe rebuilding at the Coliseum, which also could have been discussed here and is not. But I mean, that's another reason why we're here. Again, the easy thing and the right thing to do, rarely the same thing. And I think that holds true with the Coliseum, rebuilding on that site. It's the easy thing, but it's not the right thing to do if you really want to save baseball generationally, is that a word? In Oakland or in the East Bay. So 2017, the A's come out and say, well, we've found our site. We had narrowed it down from 3 to 1. I believe it was the Coliseum and Howard Terminal and the Peralta site right there, right next to Laney College, right around the corner from Lake Merritt in downtown Oakland. And you can't see 880, but it's right there too. The A's say, this is what we're going to do. We've got some renderings, and you know what? That land was always going to be tight right there, and that's the school district's land. We're on that in just a second. I always thought this site is you're really trying to jam in a ballpark in a really small, good piece of real estate, good patch of land, but then you got a college right next door, and freeway right behind the third deck. It would have been weird. Anyway, well, it doesn't even come to fruition because the Oakland School District or the Peralta Community School District, I can't remember exactly what the entity was, but they came out and said, that's our land, and we had no intention of ever giving that to you for this purpose or at all. We're keeping this. We don't know where you got this from. You can't take it. So just like that, Peralta site done, which brought us to Howard Terminal, which was a really good thing for some reasons. But imagine if this had just happened. We wouldn't be here right now. Okay, so November 2018. The A's do what they probably should have done from the start, and that is choose the best site, but also the most difficult site, because again, the easy thing and the right thing are rarely the same thing. This was the tough thing and the right thing. Not usually the same thing, but in this case, I think it was. So choosing this site in November 2018 and looking back, I remember my initial impression was, okay, you're coming off this whole Peralta misstep. You've got to make sure in everything you do here that you actually get it done before you announce it. Don't get everybody too riled up and fired up, because if you misstep here, if you don't cross your T's and dot your I's, and something slips through the cracks, I mean, it's like you're already at kind of like strike two, even though Peralta was just strike one, but other things were strike one. The years before that were strike one. Peralta was strike two. This was bound to be strike three. By the way, do you notice I've included what I think is the original rendering for the site? Or actually, no, there was more of a square design. This might have been version 2. I wanted to show you one of the older renderings, but they choose this site. Everybody's excited. They all realize, okay, this is going to take probably 5 years to put together, which is a crazy long amount of time. But guess what? We are just here about 5 years removed. They realize that this is not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. This is the optimal site. This is going to get them more of a development, a neighborhood, ballpark district, so to speak. And everybody was entranced. I mean, now finally you have something that can compete for the casual baseball fan here in the Bay Area. Of course, the Giants have Oracle Park. It's a beautiful place to visit. If you're a hardcore baseball person or you don't even know what a left fielder is, you'll just go to Oracle Park. It's very scenic. You've seen pictures. It's where your friends go. So now finally the A's are planning to have something that can literally compete all the way around with anything else out there in baseball. I mean, what are your favorites? PNC Park, T-Mobile Park in Seattle. I'm trying to, really cool new stadium ideas. Well, this would be right up there with the cream of the crop. I'm going to hold short and say, what if this had happened? Maybe it still will happen. We're not 100% of the way there as I record this video right now in Las Vegas. There are some major hurdles still left to clear. Purchasing land, agreeing to purchase land, is the first step of many steps. So let's just understand where we're at. But I won't use this one in the past tense, but imagine if this had just already gone through. Yeah, we would not be here right now. We'd be doing construction videos of Howard Terminal. Okay, spring 2020, this is one of the things that has hindered us in more recent weeks and months, and that's the pandemic and inflation, the delay and the complication that they caused. And look, we could point fingers here all day. City, team, county, this, baseball, that. I mean, nobody could control this, and we understand the effects of it. For a year and probably change, this was very much gone off the radar. In fact, I remember chasing the Howard Terminal story while I was at spring training, so late February 2020. And things were going to happen in March. Things were going to happen in April. All of a sudden, they don't happen because, the world shut down, let alone the financial issues that we're seeing here in late 2022, early 23. Inflation to the point that, if there was no inflation in recent times, the city of Oakland has already secured $375 million of federal and state grants to cover offsite infrastructure stuff. Well, guess what? The original total was $350 something. They would have already covered all of it and then some, but inflation made it cost more. So it's my belief, and I'm not going to use this one as, this is one of the things that got us here. But imagine if we didn't have this. We would have had a lot more time, and the money that's already been secured would have covered the gap. Yeah, covered the gap of infrastructure cost for the Howard Terminal Ballpark. Okay, and that brings us to late 2022. And I will say, if it's true, what has been reported and what has been proclaimed by some inside the Oakland political realm, that the city of Oakland had actually planned a summit for this week, for 3 days this week, with a mediator that the A's chose to either figure this out. And they also had agreed on media silence for the last couple months. And that's one of the reasons why both sides were just hey, we just not going to talk. Okay, here we are. Oakland finally saying, let's come to a summit. You bring the mediator you want. Let's try and hash this out. If we can do it, great. If we can't, we're both going to say we can't. That's it. But I will say this. Imagine if Oakland had been this aggressive about it 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, at any point years ago. I will say, the A's having to get Oakland's attention to even get on their radar and to be discussed in city council meetings, it should not have taken some of the things it did to get on Oakland's radar. And I would understand if over the years it was just one person, and that makes this easy, actually. It wasn't even one person that always made it difficult. It was the whole thing that always made it difficult. That being said, you're looking at Shang Tao here, who just took office a couple months ago. They came to the table, and I can't say anything bad about that. In fact, I'm upset that didn't happen. I'm upset that they came that far and it was just too late. Imagine if this week right now, if what didn't happen in Las Vegas, at least what was announced, and what has been happening for the last, couple weeks and months, all of the lobbying for the legislative session in Nevada, imagine if none of that had happened, and imagine if the two sides, Oakland and the A's, were having their summit for the couple days this week and what they would have found. And maybe they finally would have found some common ground or creative ways to get this done. Those final negotiations, the ones that were scheduled, never happened. Imagine if they did. Would we be here right now? Think about that. So, that's a long and winding road right there. That's 20 minutes of me explaining how the heck did we get here. But if you think about it, it's not just one thing. It's not just from recent times. It's a bunch of things that if they had gone slightly different, we'd be here in a totally better reality. Let me know what you think about this video in the comments section below. Thumbs up on it if you're still watching all the way here to the end. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel so that I can see you next time.